Hello students, right now we have to study the term why the economists disagree. What the concept of disagree? Disagree means there are certain things which are not agreed by each and every society, because in the previous class we studied the term what is called the capitalist economy, what is the socialist economy, what is the mixed economy. But there is a certain economic system. Take for example of investment. Let us say another example, that is monetary policy, fiscal policies, inflation, and that is called the trade off, the trading between the countries, right. Take into account the public debt, direct tax, indirect taxes. There are certain things are there where each and every society to be accepting that part, full employment, some part will be accepting it, but some part not be accepting it. Actually this disagree is to be takes place on the basis of three most important concepts: the difference in the scientific and judgmental concept, difference in scientific and judgmental, scientifically we can agree with it, sometime may not be agreeing with it. Let us say for example the sun in the solar system, whether it is fixed or to be movable. Some say that, some thinking that some scientists say that no, sun is not fixed, rather all the planet are fixed, sun to be move around it. And the other economy, I mean the other scientists, they also be say no, the reverse is the concept. So that the scientifically some views are there, opinions are to be differ. Judgmental concept also with the differ. So that is the first case where the disagree to be takes place. Then difference in the value, difference in value. So that means value means the worth of it, whether it actually it is acceptable, may not be acceptable, right. That sometimes some economists agree with certain field, some statements, some I mean let us say concepts, some may not be agree with it. And the next, the most important point, the perceptions and the reality. Perceptions and reality. There is a difference in the perceptions and the difference in the reality. What they perceive and in what they actually practice, that will differ. So the difference occur on these particular things: judgmental concepts, on the basis of the value, on the basis of the reality or the accepting it, that is the perceptions, because the person to person the perceptions are completely different, they are not same. Similarly the economists are the human beings after all, their perceptions also be differ, their value also be the differ, their judgment concept also be the differ. Therefore there is some points which are not to be disagreed. There are the thousands of points we can take into account. If we move to the books to be completely thorough, the books to be there, out of the some micro explanation or the micro principles and the macro principles, some part to be agreed by each and every economist and some are to be not agree. What are the points of the disagrees? We have to take into account the four most important disagree points of there. What are those 4 points? One by one we will be explaining it. The first point of the difference is that economist often gives conflicting policy advice. First is that economist often gives conflicting policy and advice. So they often say that the conflicting, let us say conflicting policies. What the concept of the conflicting policy? Because society differ, person to person to be differ, situation to situation, I mean economy to be differ. So what the principles to be applicable in India may not be applicable in US, which is going to be applicable in US may not be applicable in Japan, may not be applicable in China or something else. So that means some policies of the advice are not to be applicable each and everywhere. So that the most important difficulties are there, and where the economists have to disagree with it. Like in India, it required inflation is the better, because the mild inflation is required, because which it to be treated as the turning for the economic development. But some say that no, economists, we should not be taking into account the inflation situation, we always take into account the balanced budget. There is no surplus production going to be takes place or underproduction. So, always there is a balanced production. What the demand, exactly same manner we are going to be supply. Like the John Baptist say that supply creates its own demand. There is always a full employment equilibrium. There is no overproduction, the underemployment. But if you are maintaining that sort of things, never you have to prosper our economy. You know, to prosper our economy, you know, to improve our economy, definitely you have to spend some amount, right? And expenditure definitely much more than the income. If the expenditure is more than the income, then economy to be prosper. But what do we believe? आम कौन सब भावुचे ना आम इनकम करवा अधिका खर्च करवा कम जब इनकम अधिक करिया खर्च कम करिया ताले केवेले तुम इकोनॉमी प्रॉस्पर होबनी नेवर इट बी गोइंग टू बी इंक्रीजिंग योर इकोनॉमी इन ऑर्डर टू इंक्रीज योर इकोनॉमी you have to spend more, collect less. That means we find in India, what you find every time, each and every year we find a deficit budget. The expenditure is much more than income. Why did it take place? Because the intention is to be increasing the GDP level. So GDP can be increased if this thing to be takes place, right? So that is the first point of the policy making. The economist often gives the policy which is to be often, I mean, so what we find is the conflicting concept. Sometimes it to be agree with, sometimes will not be agreeing with. Second part, we have to move to the second point. They sometimes disagree about, the validity and alternative, validity and alternative positive theories about the world. Positive theories about the world. That means they disagree about what? The validity. So, what the alternative theories are available? Those positive theories, actually what is positive economy, students, the later on we have to explaining the term what is the positive economy and normative economy. The positive theory, the positive thinking concepts sometimes may be applicable, may not be applicable. That is the another point of the disagree point. It is not every time we have to find in the terms that is the validity of all the theories, positive theories about the world which is to be applicable, may not be applicable also with it. So, that is the second point. Third one, they may have the different values, they may have different values and therefore different normative views about what policies should try to accomplish. What policy try to accomplish. That means which particular concept that we have to take into account. So, the different values, there are the different normative views are there. The positive views are there, normative view also be. What the concept the positive and normative, actually positive means scientific concepts. What you find, the positive means the scientific concept, normative means the emotional point of view. The scientific concept to be differ as well as the emotional point also be the differ, they are not be same. So, there is a difference in the values and therefore the normative views about the policy, any sort of economic policy we have to take into account, they having the normative views are there. That means the emotional concept, attachment with that. Let for example, in India itself also be. you can find the petrol price is each and every zone are not same. In New Delhi the something is to be differ, in Odisha also they differ, in Kolkata also they differ, they are not to be same. Everywhere the petrol price, diesel price is not same. Why it is so? Because there is a policy implementation part, emotional point of view. Some government, some state governments say that no, we have to imposing the tax, some say that no, should not be imposing it, we have to free. In Orissa, what you find, every sort of that the different policies to be undertaken by the government, so that make the each and every labor to be the lazy. That means what they provide, each different type of policies take into account. The free meal, free midday meal, let us say free, the cost of production is to be huge, but they provide the goods and services to the society at a very negligible rate. So, that means how they compensating the deficit, there is a problem. In order to compensating the deficit, the huge amount of revenue is to be required, which is to be not possible. So, therefore, there is an emotional concept, the normative point you take into account. So, that is the another point of the different view of the differences, like your positive thinking and normative thinking also with that. Positive means scientific concept with that, scientifically you can prove it, if you do these things will happen, but that also may not accepted by each and every economist. Then how the normative view going to be accepting it. And the last one, the last point of the difference of the economists disagree is that yet there are many perceptions or propositions. There are some propositions, about which most economists are agree. Economists are agree. So, that means it is not so that the normative point of view, their thinking point of view, they are going to be differ, rather there are certain things some economists are going to be agreeing with it. So, these things that like your most important part fiscal policies, most important part let us say deficit financing, every sort of economy is going to be accepting it. So, this is the most important idea why the economists disagree with a certain concept. Beside that, now we have to start with the what are the other component of your economics. Let us say start with the first one, deductive method and inductive method. Deductive and inductive. There are the two way to explaining the term economics, one is called the deductive method, another is called the inductive method. Deductive means general to particular, deductive means general to particular, whereas inductive means particular to general, particular to general. There are the two methods of the studying the economics, one is deductive, second one is to be inductive. In deductive it is the general to particular, and in inductive it is the particular to general. That means in general to particular means the first the law of demand to be explained, and then so the other thing being constant. What do you say? The general to the particular. If you say the terms law of demand, simple example, when the price fall demand increases, that the law things explain that other thing means constant, when price increase demand fall, that is the law. From that particular law we have to move to the particular concepts, that is the general point of view. The general opinion says that the law tells us when price fall demand increases, or the if you take into account the when the government spend more and more amount of money or more money circulated in the economics, then inflation to be takes place. That means the general to the particular. Then what the particular tells? Everywhere if the government spend more and more, definitely price level increases, or in the other way, when there is a low down in the price, the demand of the product will increase, because the theory backed, and on the basis of the theory you have to explaining the terms, you have to read the terms accordingly. That is called the general to the particular, because the law is given, law from the law to the explanations, that means the law to the application part of it. But what do you find it? Particular to the general. Here the demand law is given, let us the demand law is given. What the law? When price increases, demand falls, and when price falls, demand increases. That is the law. Now in the economy, when there is a rise in the demand, now we are going to be study why there is a rise in the demand. The rise in the demand, it is so because there is a fall in the price of the product. The people try to consuming more of the product because they have the purchasing power. As they have the more purchasing power, therefore they try to purchase more and more. So that is called the general to the particular, because the deductive says that the deductive method of the studying a term is that you have to deducing the things from a particular point of view. That means the thing law is given to you, law ta as such अछि, se law ko base करके तमे study करियो. While studying that part, that is called the particular terms to be explaining, because backed by the certain things. But if you take into account the general to, I mean the particular to the general, now we have to collect some data. When price increases, demand fall. If you take into account 4 to 5 situations, after studying the 4 to 5 situations, then what do you find? Then we have to concluding the model. That model tells us that the quantity demand of a particular product, it is a function of the different things, that your price, quantity, income and so on, and we have to study in every sort of situations. Then when other things being constant, when price rise, quantity demand fall and so on. That means from the particular to the general, the two way to approaching it. We have to collect in the data, after the collection of the data, feed the trend, from the trend we are to concluding a law, that is called as the demand law. But in the reverse part, from the demand law we have to studying it and studying the situation, when price fall, definitely demand increases, or why there is a rise in the demand? Because of the fall in the price. So that is the concept, what is called the deductive and inductive method. Now move to the next one, positive economics and normative economics. Positive economics and normative economics. So positive means scientific and normative means the emotional. So the positive economics means there is a positive thinking about it. Positive thinking in the sense, if you let us say tax more, definitely the revenue to be increases and government expenditure going to be invest, government expenditure increases. So because the government expenditure, what the government to be spent, it is backed by the tax or the revenue collected with from the tax. So that is called the, here the scientific concept is that there is a link. Without link, it describes the world, as it is. The world as it is. It describes the world as it is. It should not be changes anything. Now what you find, when the government tax more, obviously the government expenditure going to be increased more and more. But in case of your normative economics, we find it is the emotional concept, that means prescribe how the world should be. Here describe the world as it is, it prescribe how the world should be. That means here it will be what ought to be and how and why. Here how and why, but in this case what ought to be, right. That means emotion, as it is taken into account the emotional point of view, कौन हवा कथा, कौन हवा होउची, से विषय study करा होची, what ought to be there. That means prescribe the world how it should be, in which direction to be moved, कौन हवा कथा, कौन नहीं, just खाली ऊपर explaining करिबा. In reality, we should not be taken into account. In really, while you enter in the reality, it comes to the positive economics, not in the part of the normative economics. So, the results are not to be based upon the facts, it is subjective in nature. So, result, what do you find the results? Results are not upon the facts. Then what the result it will takes place in case of a normative economy, there is no backing of it, there is no back of it, but in this case there is always a cause and effect relationship. Here it studies the how and why and always explain there is a cause and effect relationship, always there is a cause and effect. That means, if you are finding it out the terms, let us say for example, the cause and effect as I cited the example, expenditure of the government to be increases if the government imposed on the more tax. So, it is a scientific in nature, like the law of gravitations, anything you can take. What you find there? There is a cause as well as the effect, but in this case of your normative economic, results are not the based upon the fact. What do you explain? Purely on the basis of the emotional concept, there is no backing of it, there is nothing going to be back. How it will be studied and in which way to explaining it, those things are going to be explained to us. So, this is all about your the first module. In the first module, we explain the terms, what are the 10 basic principles of economics, what are the models to be occur, what is called the production possibility frontier, and what is called the the circular flow of the economy, how the economy to be flow from two sector economy, from the producer's point of view, from the consumer's point of view, the product market, factor markets. Then we also be explain what are the product that is the application of the production possibility frontier. Thereafter, what are the basic key terms of economics, definitions of economics, on which point the economists have to be agree with it and some part is the disagreeing with it. Thereafter, we study the term what is positive, normative economics, deductive, inductive economics, a method of the studying the economics, as well as you could take into account another basic terms, what are the things are the what are the key assumptions of it. After the key assumptions, we also will explain the term what is microeconomics and macroeconomics. So, this is brief idea about the first module. Now, in the coming class, we have to start with the term what is called as the demand and market situations. We have to start with the term what is called as the demand, thereafter your supply, thereafter their elasticities, then we have to take into account the market equilibrium. After the market equilibrium, we have to explain the term what is consumer surplus, producer surplus. After consumer surplus, producer surplus, then we have to move to the last part of your module 2, what is called as the externality, both positive externality, market failure and negative externality, again the market failure to be there. Okay. So, that is all for today. Thank you.